pride event. I think it's amazing. My name is Jane Hart. I'm a proud bisexual woman who is passionate about mental health advocacy and sticking up for the little guy. I have two pretty awesome boys, Daniel and Remington. Um, as a lot of you may know, I grew up about 10 minutes outside of town on a farm, swimming in canals, being pulled up, or being pulled behind a pickup truck on a sled in the dead of winter, flipping a four-wheeler on the front lawn, standing at the edge of the field, mouth wide open as the crop dusters flew by are just some of the many things that make me wonder how I'm still alive today. If I taught you how to ride a motorcycle as a kid, you might be entitled to financial compensation. I saw way too many friends just rev it up, and one ran straight into the back of our shop, and I don't think their parents ever let them come back. Summers spent at the pay-up pool, swimming, getting A&W ice cream afterwards, just all the good memories, going mudding up at the butte, shooting targets, and simply getting your hands dirty is just a way of life here. I would make a bet that each person here today has experienced some sort of bullying for being exactly who they are, for simply existing. That's one of the reasons we hold Pride events, so that everybody feels included and so that we can come together and be proud of who we are, to be proud of the levels of self-awareness that we've achieved in order to plant our feet firmly on the ground and stand in our truth. To know ourselves so fully and deeply that the opinions of others aren't even a blip on the radar. I remember a time in high school where a rumor was spread about me that I showered with a classmate of the same gender. The rumor was entirely misleading. We did so much more than shower. When you grow up in a conservative household, a rumor like that will quite literally get your butt beat. The reactions I received that day set the stage for this fear of being me to just sit and fester. Being gay or being different isn't a downgrade on this road we call life. It adds spice, it adds beauty, though it can make things harder on you, especially in a small town. In my opinion, feeling strong in who you are, having that assuredness on the inside, beats the heck out of appeasing people who aren't accepting of who you are. For years, I watched an extended family member be bullied over and over and over again for being gay. He was deeply hurt by so many people, and yet his light still shines so bright. I've known people who have been ostracized from churches and community groups, and even families, simply because of their preferences, because of who they love or how they identify. That bigotry and hatred is generational. It ends up infecting each and every generation until someone in the family line stands up and says enough. After leaving town at 17, I kept searching and searching, diving deeper into who I am, who I love, and what I experienced in my childhood. Despite knowing I was bisexual, I felt like I couldn't admit that. Sometimes even to myself, like, oh, I was just experimenting. The church says that's wrong, so I must not be that way, blah, blah, blah. All of these excuses. To be honest, I was deeply scared to let go of that denial and just openly be myself. Shoot, I wanted so badly to walk the straight and narrow that I ended up getting married and divorced twice before coming out. Humans do whatever it takes to belong, to feel accepted by their community. And if something about them gets in the way of that, then denial prevails. And it prevailed for me until it couldn't anymore, until I hit a brick wall. I ended up seeking therapy at 24 years old, and it was the best thing I could have ever done for myself and for my children. Highly recommend. Accepting myself and coming to terms with what happened to me as a child came with a whole new batch of issues, however, when I learned that I have dissociative identity disorder. For those of you who don't know, DID used to be called multiple personality disorder. They changed the name because no one has more than one personality. Rather, one personality can fracture into many parts or not fully develop due to the disruption abuse can cause in a child's development. Everyone dissociates on some level. Ever had an argument with a friend or a coworker and then have to shove those feelings into a box in order to go back to work okay? That's dissociation. A war veteran that comes home and is unable to speak about his or her experiences overseas, that's dissociation. It becomes pervasive when the brain relies too much on the escape dissociation provides from ongoing traumatic experiences. It's as though the self has no choice but to shatter in order to preserve the psyche. After a few months of psychological testing, the day I was diagnosed, I cried and I cried. I felt like that was it. Now I'd never belong. I no longer had one self to accept, but many selves. After reconciling with my diagnosis, I did what I do best. I read every book I could get my hands on about the effects of childhood trauma and the development of dissociative disorders. What I found was validating, and it helped me make sense of myself. But it also forced me to stand face to face with some serious stigma. Stigma that could get my children taken away from me. Stigma that labeled me as crazy or a liar. Stigma perpetuated by Hollywood that said people who have dissociative identity disorder are dangerous, when I knew that to be far from the truth. People with DID are victims of abuse. They are folks who coped with trauma by breaking into pieces, and those pieces of our personality keep the traumatic memories contained in order to give us a fighting chance at living a normal life. Those parts aren't just waiting for the right moment to become a serial killer like the movies portray. After writing a few articles and doing a few podcast interviews advocating for factual information to be taught in colleges across the nation about dissociative disorders, I was asked if I wanted to share my story with the world via a documentary series working with A&E TV Network, which would eventually be called Many Sides of Jane. If coming home and facing your parents after a rumor went around about you being gay in high school proved difficult, I would really be upping the ante by speaking my truth on such a giant platform. Making the decision to share my story was like throwing myself to the wolves of society. But by doing that, I would be helping millions of people feel validated, heard, and seen. I would be fighting back. So I did it, and despite the extra cortisol I ended up with from the looming threat of those wolves, I don't regret a single thing. The thousands of messages I've received since the documentary aired have become my fuel to keep going, to keep advocating, and to keep speaking my truth. Hearing the stories of so many other trauma survivors who have felt alone in their symptoms and in their emotions and in their lives, having them express to me that they finally feel seen and that they finally got the help they needed after watching my documentary, that makes it worth it. This life we live is about love, and it's about acceptance. It's about being proud of who you are, no matter how you identify, no matter who you love, no matter your disability, no matter the country you were born in, and no matter the color of your skin. It's about not putting conditions on the love we have for our children. It's about working on ourselves in order to set healthy examples for future generations. It's about sticking together and building an accepting and inclusive community so that the love can multiply and expand and envelop each one of us. This world is a better place because of events like Pride, and it gives me all the good feelings to be here at Ontario's first Pride. It's past time that everyone in this town feels included, and I hope all of you here today feel loved because you are so loved. Thank you. Woo! And if you guys have any questions, then I would love to answer them. You can come up to me. I promise I'm a nice person. Thank you.